Good evening and welcome to the College of Liberal Arts virtual town hall for alumni and friends. My name is Megan Mell and I'm the Director of Alumni Experiences and College Events, and I'll be your host for the next hour. I want to thank all our alumni and friends for joining us this evening, and as they continue to come in, welcome. This is our third virtual town hall we've presented, and it's really given us a chance to connect with our alumni throughout Minnesota and beyond and give you a more in-depth look into your college. We hope to continue these virtual town halls, even as we move toward hosting in-person events again. So if you're enjoying these, let us know in the post-event survey that you'll be receiving soon. Today at our virtual town hall, you'll get an update on the college, and we'll dive into a few topics focused on the student experience, remote internships, and the future of work. And there will be time in the second half of the event for audience questions. So please submit them anytime throughout the event using the Q&A button located at the bottom of your screen. And in addition to the speakers you'll hear from today throughout the event, we also have a few other college leaders joining us who are ready to respond to your questions. And they include Annika Karlstead, Assistant Director for Facilities and Capital Planning, Nanette Hanks, Assistant Dean for Curriculum, and Dr. Alexander Hines, Director of Diversity, Equity, and Access for Undergraduate Education. I'd now like to invite the Dean of CLA, John Coleman, to welcome you and share some of CLA's lessons from the pandemic.
Thank you very much, Megan, for the introduction, and thank all of you for being here. As Megan said, this is our third virtual town hall, and it's been great because we've been able to have people from all over the country, and indeed people from around the world tune in ways that would not have been possible if we were doing these in person. So very grateful for you all being here. This has been a long year in many ways, and that's certainly true here in Minneapolis and across the country and really around the world. It's been a year plus that's been tumultuous and in many ways transformative. Within the college during this time, we've been any number of transformations of our experience, including moving to virtually all online delivery of our curriculum back in the spring and in the fall, and then continuing into spring of 2021. And along the way, we've learned a lot of lessons about new opportunities that we might have, new ways of operating within the college, new avenues to reach more people like events of this type. And so as we're moving forward, we want to be mindful of the lessons we've learned so that we can be increasingly flexible as a college. We can be more welcoming, more innovative, and increase our commitment, which is already strong, to tackling society's greatest challenges, many of which we've seen in very full display over the course of the last 15 months. So toward that end, I would like to share with you a few examples of our work over the past year. And here I'll focus in the areas of curriculum, engagement, and some of our work around diversity, equity, and inclusion. In the area of curriculum, we developed earlier this year a work group on curricular opportunities. And that group's charge was to explore areas where CLA could innovate and lead in rethinking our curriculum, given all the many changes in our world, and rethinking degree programs, both online as well as in person. We want to be able to reach our students at the university, but we also know there are many audiences outside the university who we might be able to reach more effectively now with our curriculum and with degree programs. This work around curricular opportunities very much complements the work we've been doing around career readiness in our undergraduate student population and our expanded career services for graduate students as well. We want to make sure that all of our students are positioned for success in the new world environment, the new economy, new society that we are headed into. One of the most exciting and timely projects that we kicked off this year that also involves our curriculum is what we call the Public Life Project. This project will be helping students develop the knowledge and skills to grapple with the polarizing divisions in our society and the inequalities and inequities across different groups in our society, to be able to engage empathetically with others who are different from themselves, whether those differences be across geography, across racial groups, religion, political perspectives, or whatever that might be. The Public Life Project will also include research and engagement components, and that includes an upcoming series of short pieces that we are producing in collaboration with Twin Cities Public Television. Short vignettes where our students and faculty talk about these issues of navigating differences, speaking across differences, understanding each other, and so on. You'll be hearing much more about this in the fall, including some of the specific courses that we have lined up for the fall curriculum, which I think are really quite exciting and will be really attractive to our students. Around the area of engagement, one thing that I want, so community engagement, one thing I want to note is that we have been in the process of renovating Pillsbury Hall on campus, and that continues on schedule. It will be ready to open later this summer. It's been very much preserved, though with some enhancements on the outside, which you can see in the photo, but dramatically restructured and redesigned inside. It's going to be a wonderful, wonderful space. And Pillsbury Hall will house the Department of English, and it will also be the home of the Liberal Arts Engagement Hub. And the Liberal Arts Engagement Hub connects the work of the liberal arts with community partners. It provides residency programs where community partners can have space to work with faculty, students, and staff on projects of mutual interest. So we're really excited about this. It brings, it gives people a home on the campus to work with our scholars and our students. We will soon, in the space of equity, diversity, equity, inclusion, be launching an extensive dashboard that will allow instructors and departments to compare how groups of students, for example, underrepresented students, first-generation college students, international students, how they are performing in their classes compared to other groups. And what we hope is that this will allow faculty and instructors to see where the gaps are, where are there notable differences between different groups of students in their classes, and that knowledge will then allow us to develop curricular strategies, teaching techniques, and so on through workshops and other mechanisms to help reduce those gaps that we are seeing in student performance in our classes. We know that there are many reasons why equity gaps emerge, but we want to be mindful of the fact that some of them are perhaps with regard to teaching techniques, curricular methodologies, and so on, and make sure that we are being very proactive about that work. And the first step is simply seeing the data. Where are these gaps emerging in our college? So that's one of the, we have a lot of work going on in diversity, equity, and inclusion, and that's one of the innovations that we will be launching. I've been working on this year and we'll be launching going into next year. We also have a new college-wide leadership position in the area of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And pictured on your screens, you see history professor Melinda Lindquist. She will serve as our inaugural Associate Dean for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. And she will play a lead role in providing leadership to the college and to all of the departments and units within the college that will help us build the inclusive environment that will enable first-rate research and creative work, first-rate teaching, and first-rate engagement. So we have a lot that we can learn, a lot that we can share across our departments, many of whom have been doing really great work in this area. And Professor Lindquist will give us a chance to really rethink our strategies, identify where there are significant gaps, learn from each other, and move us forward as we progress on these issues. So those are a few examples of how we are aiming for CLA to emerge from the other end of the pandemic as a stronger college and a stronger community, in this case around curriculum, engagement, and diversity, equity, and inclusion. Another way of thinking of this I thought was really nicely stated in a TEDx talk that I recently heard. And the speaker in that talk said that we should be striving both in colleges and universities. We should be striving to be both the best in the world and the best for the world. And that to me speaks very deeply about what a public land grant university and college should be trying to do. How can we be best for the world? And we believe by putting alums out on into the world who are ready to engage in their communities, engage across differences, who are well prepared for a wide variety of careers, by bringing community partners on campus to work with us to make sure that we are building a welcoming and inclusive environment, and one that is fair within our college and in the communities that we work with, that all of those will make us better and stronger as a college, and they will also be best for the world as well. So that is our commitment in our work as we take the lessons that the pandemic has taught us, and many of these we're still learning, and we carry them forward into the future. As we've been doing this work, and particularly thinking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, our faculty have been deeply engaged in this area. We have many faculty members who do vital work in the study of race, justice, dignity, and respect. And they do this in their research, their creative work, their instruction, as well as their engagement in our communities. And their contributions across the arts and the humanities and social sciences elevate and enhance our understanding of these critical issues. So I'd like to take the opportunity now to introduce you to a few of our faculty through our most recent faculty research video, Creating Toward Social Justice.
How we are linked to the work we do is deeply personal. I was born and raised in St. Paul, and I spent the majority of my life growing up in Minnesota, being one of the only students of color in my classes, the only Chicana for sure. In my teaching, in my scholarship, and through my creative work, I investigate how Chicanas, Latinx subvert systemic inequalities by creating alternative narratives and spaces. Thinking about networks and relationships as constellations, myself and the other artists of color I collaborate with are trying to create work that fosters a sense of belonging and deep connection that extends beyond the production of the art itself. Work that ignites the imaginations of our community and inspires an alternative to the isolation many of us have felt. My goal is to tell stories and work with others to tell their stories so that another little girl who is growing up now doesn't have to feel like she's the only one in her class.
Everyone comes from somewhere, and where we come from shapes how we live our lives. For the past 20 years at the U, I've been studying the lives of Korean youth adopted internationally by white families. I'm interested in how adoptees navigate the paradox of growing up as a minority in their own family with minimal connection to their Korean heritage. Though I'm not adopted, how people make sense of their ethnicity and race resonate with my immigrant family upbringing. My parents immigrated from South Korea in the mid-1960s and owned family cleaners and tailors while I was growing up in Connecticut. I pay tribute to my parents' dreams and sacrifices by referring to my research team as the Family Lab. My 87-year-old dad now lives with my family. He's an artist, and in his backyard studio paints Korean landscapes from memory. My new work is trying to capture how homeland yearnings persist among immigrants, even 50 years later.
As a mortality demographer, I study heavy questions, literal matters of life and death. But the most difficult part of my work is figuring out precisely what question to pursue. When I'm in the grip of one of these intellectual puzzles, the way I make progress is by coming back to the data over and over again, relentlessly, until something finally clicks and I understand it by seeing it in a new way. The question I asked myself in my most recent study is how the catastrophic scale of death due to the COVID-19 pandemic compares to another US catastrophe, racial inequality. I discovered that even if Black Americans had been immune to the coronavirus, their mortality this year would probably still be higher than white mortality during the pandemic. Once we see that racial inequality means a pandemic's worth of death to Black Americans every single year, it should change the way we think about fighting racism. When we consider ideas like reparations or defunding the police, our question should shift from what's politically palatable to just what will work.
What does it take to make a way through a situation that looks impossible? As a writer and educator, I want to help explore what it means to reckon with instability and discomfort, to work with the mess and read the big patterns that stay happening, despite the differences playing over the surface. I'm also concerned with interdisciplinary modes of composition in music and text, the social and private. How is composition embodied and enacted in the work I'm making? Especially when so much of my work critiques the nexus of spectacle, violence, and power. In all of my compositions, poetry, libretti, essays, visual texts, I'm trying to hold contradiction without seeking to resolve it. How do we live in that indeterminate space?
The work I create reflects a diverse and interconnected visual history. My research begins with quilts made by enslaved and free African American women during the time of enslavement through the 20th century. My art is informed by the realities of those who stitched and sewed a resolute legacy that has gifted freedom, personhood, and rich visual language to our world. I love working with clay. Clay is egalitarian, but at the same time indifferent. It doesn't matter how skilled you are. You have to work with and respond to it. When I begin making tiles, I have no idea what the resulting quilt will look like. What I'm really doing is exploring the substance of the clay itself, challenging the intrinsic properties of the material. I strive to sustain and honor the many gifts of my personal and collective history, embedded in the visual chronicles of my communal ancestry.
There's so much more socially constructed meaning in the way we speak than people realize. Do you expect someone to sound different depending on whether you're listening to a man or a woman? Whether you've decided that the person is gay or straight?
We all have preconceptions about how people's voices will match their faces. And previous studies suggest people are better at recognizing faces within their own ethnic group. We're asking the question of how much that same principle extends into speech perception.
Since all of the existing research in the field of speech-language hearing sciences is based solely on white varieties, we realized that to study this question, we had to create a new database pulling from a more diverse population sample.
Creating this resource for anyone to use is an important contribution to increasing representation in research, and a step towards addressing historical inequity in the discipline of speech-language hearing sciences as a whole. If we want our science to reflect reality, then we need our research data to reflect it as well.
If you are interested in hearing more, learning more about our faculty's work, I would encourage you to take a quick visit to our website, that's cla.umn.edu. If you click on research and creative work, you will find examples like those you just saw in the video and many, many more. We have an outstanding faculty, incredibly inventive and creative. And I think you'll enjoy the stories that you read there about their work and the impact of the work and how they go about doing it, as you were getting a sense of from the video. This past year, as I mentioned earlier, has been a challenge really for everyone, certainly a challenge for our faculty and staff, and quite significantly, a year of challenges for our students as well. So I would now like to welcome Brian Tregilgas to tell us what this year has been like from the student perspective, and welcome also Emily Loudon from CLA Career Services to tell us how they have been helping students during this time. Brian graduated this past December with a degree in global studies, and he is now working at Cargill as a sales associate. As a student, Brian received a Mulholland Cravens Leadership Scholarship to participate in a summer-long internship with Cargill, which he then parlayed into a full-time position this winter. Brian, we would love to hear more about your time in CLA, how things are going for you at Cargill, and maybe how that summer internship helped prepare you for the work that you're doing now.
Thanks, Dean Coleman. Appreciate the introduction. So yeah, I came to CLA in 2017 after high school, knowing pretty much exactly what I wanted to study, which was global studies. I was interested in international development, politics, economics, and Spanish. And I pretty much walked into the global studies office on week 2 and said, this is the major for me, but I have no idea what I want to do with this. And while I really enjoyed my freshman year, afterwards, I decided that I wanted to do something a little bit different for my sophomore year. I wanted to study abroad, but not just for 1 semester, but for 2. So in the fall of my sophomore year, I went to Argentina, which was a great experience. And then in the spring, I went to Ecuador, which, while also great, was a completely different experience because for half of it, I was living with a host family in a rural part of Ecuador and doing an internship, which I really got a lot of value of at a microfinance bank. And I was able to do that because of the flexibility of my global studies degree, which is part of the reason I chose it and part of the reason why I chose CLA. While I was in Ecuador, I heard about a company called Cargill. Now, being from Minnesota, you would think I would have heard about them, but I hadn't before. So I decided to apply for a recruiting event for the following summer because a friend there had recommended it to me. I didn't think I would apply, or I didn't think I would be accepted because everyone else going, and on the application it was meant for business students, but I applied anyways, and after a couple of interviews I was accepted with 24 other business students from around the country. And it was a great experience, and I realized that I could find my place in business, just not any business. So after 6 interviews over a year and a half, I finally started my internship at Cargill in their food ingredient sales department. And that internship was last summer, and it was also supported by, Dean Coleman mentioned, the Mulholland Cravens Leadership Scholarship, which was, to me, really stood out as an endorsement from CLA that I was on the right track, that I was doing the right thing, and that Cargill was really going to be a good place for me. That internship went well, and after graduating this last December, I started full-time as a food ingredient sales associate. And what that means is I am essentially an account manager selling Cargill's food ingredient solutions to some accounts that I manage. And it's really interesting to learn about business acumen. I know people like to throw around that term. It's kind of a buzzword, but for me, it's really been interesting because although I had a minor in management, there's a lot of things in business you learn on the spot. What has been really great for me is how I'm able to apply my global studies education and how that brings in a unique perspective. Going forward, while I'm interested in food ingredients and Cargill, I eventually want to transition to what some might refer to as a more purpose-driven role in sustainability, especially surrounding farmer prosperity in the developing world. I think that could be another role at Cargill, an NGO, or other organizations. And at some point, I know I want to attend grad school, but I'm just not sure what for yet.
Thank you, Brian. That was terrific. I assume that all of your internship was virtual and remote. You didn't have any chance to meet people in person during this time.
No, I never met anyone in person, and we're still remote until the fall. And so I've been working there for almost a year now and haven't met hardly any of my coworkers.
All right, thank you. Thanks very much, Brian. Emily, I'll ask you whether you're continuing to see virtual internships like the kind that Brian experienced being offered to CLA students. Are we starting to see more of a transition back to companies and organizations thinking about in-person internships? Do we think this is part of the landscape to stay, having these remote style internships? What are you seeing?
Yeah, it's a great question that we're all kind of keeping an eye on in terms of what does the future hold. And the short answer is that right now we're definitely still seeing remote internships happening for CLA students, though it's not the only way internships are happening. So we're seeing much more of a mix this summer with some remote, some in person, especially in person where industries where virtual isn't an option. We're seeing some hybrid approaches to internships. And then we're also seeing that some internship programs are still paused. Knowing that there have been some positives related to remote experiences, including more geographical access and mitigating some barriers such as transportation. And we also know that there are real challenges that come with fully remote internships, similar to what Brian just described in going through an entire internship and never meeting another coworker. And so much of an intern's learning comes from that networking and the relationship building through that experience. And so, in terms of the future, we're seeing employers pulling best practices from this past year forward into this summer's experiences. And I think there's a real opportunity to leverage some of the positive impacts of the remote in ways that can really enhance and prioritize the student learning and maximize their access to internship participation. So in some ways, I'd say it's a little too soon to know exactly how remote internships will play out beyond summer 2021. We're updating a lot of our materials, so our internship toolkit for employers and our guide for students to incorporate remote best practices and resources, anticipating that remote will continue to be part of the landscape on some level.
So we're at a particularly challenging time. I remember saying this to you a year ago, and here we are saying it again with the nature of the job market and so on. Things are looking better now, certainly, than they were a year ago when we were in the very, very early stages of the pandemic. But as our graduates are entering the workforce, which is still being affected by the pandemic, what kinds of things are you doing in career services to help our students enter into this somewhat challenging environment?
Yeah, sometimes that transition from college to life after college is challenging anyway, and then it's a uniquely challenging time, especially for those May 20 and May 21 grads. So this spring, we really focused on a communication campaign for graduating seniors with really sequenced, intentional communications specific to that audience, emphasizing that we're here to support them with their individual goals and their next steps post-graduation. Next week, we're excited to launch our third iteration of our job search communities for recent grads. So these are facilitated by our counseling team and also feature alumni and employer co-facilitators throughout the 5 weeks. And then through a campus-wide collaboration, we're hosting a new virtual recruiting event focused specifically on entry-level talent for our May 20 and 21 grads. And we've seen a strong employer response and student response to that event. And then in addition to Handshake as a forever resource, our counselors continue to be available for one-on-one appointments, and our peer advising team is available daily for drop-ins virtually until August. And that high-touch support through our counseling team is available to our recent graduates for 1 year post-graduation.
I know your office always appreciates the help that alums are interested in giving you. How can they be helpful, and how can they connect with you?
Yes, alumni engagement has such a huge impact on students, and hearing alumni stories can truly be life-changing. Even the story that Brian shared, that's like a perfect example of so many pieces of it that really resonate with students, and they can find encouragement and direction through those stories. So a couple of really specific ways to internships is we have our internship challenge, which is a campaign to elevate visibility for hiring CLA students for internships this summer. We also have our CLA Get Ready internships, which is a partnership with CLA's President's Emerging Scholars and MLK programs, and it's designed to connect sophomore students to a network of CLA alumni and employer partners to provide enhanced preparation and break down common barriers to internship participation. And we have opportunities for alumni and employers to engage with this fall 2021 cohort. We also know that issues of pay continue to be a significant barrier in students accessing high impact practices. And so CLA's internship scholarship fund provides critical support there. And finally, and more generally, just career services, we really strive to engage alumni in new and ongoing opportunities to support career development of CLA students through things like informational interviews, speaking on panels, engaging with students in our career courses, and much, much more.
Very good. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Emily. As Brian said, they're still working through the return to in-person work. I guess I shouldn't say return in Brian's case, but the arrival to in-person work. And really, like every other institution in the country and every industry, in CLA, we're also thinking through what does the future of work look like? What does the future of the workplace look like? And so we have conversations happening throughout the college, throughout the university, on this topic. And these include nuts and bolts conversations around the physical reopening of campus, as well as thinking maybe more at the 10,000 foot level of some of more of the principles and philosophy of the nature of work going forward over the coming months, certainly, but over the coming years as well. And we've been holding a lot of conversations about that. Just had a town hall inside the college on that today, and we'll have another one tomorrow to just get what people are thinking about, what their hopes and aspirations are for the future work in the college. And I'm quite sure that many of you are having these kind of conversations at your workplaces or places you volunteer and beyond. So tonight we have invited one of our most distinguished professors who studies this area to join us. Professor Phyllis Moen. Professor Moen holds the McKnight Presidential Chair in Sociology, and she is an award-winning leading expert in workplace strategies and their economic, social, and psychological impact. She is also the founder of the University of Minnesota's Advanced Careers Initiative. And that initiative brings retired alumni and others back to campus to explore their next act by widening their horizons, reimagining their identities, giving them a chance with intergenerational learning, taking classes with our students, and involvement in hands-on participation in community organizations. So Professor Moen, welcome you to the conversation.
Thank you for the very nice introduction, Dean Coleman. And like you, I've been considering the lessons from the pandemic for the future of work, like you're looking at what it means for higher education. In considering the future of work, we need to learn from the COVID-19 experience. And I see 4 lessons the pandemic has taught us about future possibilities. First, even entrenched ways of working can change at lightning speed, and new technologies can be learned on the fly. We found that information and communication technologies can have beneficial as well as deleterious impacts. Lesson 1, then, is that individuals and organizations are surprisingly adaptable. Second, the myth of ideal workers committed solely to their jobs is just that, a myth. Zoom has shown us whole persons, their homes, their pets, their children in the background. The fact is, work, family, personal life entanglements reflect the human condition. Lesson number two is that entanglements connecting the different pieces of our lives are work issues and must be recognized going forward. Third, labor market risks have spiraled, exacerbating inequalities by gender, race, and class, as well as by age. My research on workers in their 50s showed that women, and especially Hispanic and Asian American women, were the most vulnerable to job loss in April 2020. By December, many women in their 50s, Hispanic, Asian, and Black women in particular, were neither employed nor unemployed, but simply out of the workforce, typically to care for others. Lesson number 3, greater social protections and safety nets will be needed on an increasingly uneven playing field. Fourth is the value of distinctively human skills for the future of work. Clearly, empathy, care, collaboration, resourcefulness, and adaptability were essential in making work work under COVID conditions. Uniquely human problem solving, innovation, and critical thinking produce new ways of working. Lesson number 4, technologies, automation, and artificial intelligence, for instance, should complement the work only humans can do. These lessons show there are multiple futures of work and that we can bend these futures in ways that promote flexible ways of working, beneficial uses of technology. But they also show the vulnerabilities of some subgroups. We can passively accept technological disruptions or choose to use such advances to widen the pool of options and protections.
Thank you, Professor Moen. Yeah, as you were speaking, I was thinking about how many disciplines are at play here in thinking about these questions with, and particularly thinking about these issues of working remotely, working in an office with people, having flexibility around that. Some of the challenges you mentioned where people at home, in one way, it's great. You've got your family around you and the pets and all of the normal chaos maybe of everyday life. But on the other hand, you've got the everyday chaos of everyday life around you while you're trying to get work done. And there's just a lot of different ways to look at these issues. So when you think about some of the very basic questions that people are looking at now about, returning to in-person work versus maintaining more remote work, which best sustains people, which is best for people's well-being and psychological well-being, as well as getting the work done. Are there any guiding principles that occur to you that organizations should be thinking about as they're trying to figure out this right balance of in-person work, face-to-face work, and remote work?
We did a 5-year study of a work redesign that included remote work, but remote work was only one part of a larger effort to enhance both work effectiveness and employee well-being. And our research shows that neither remote or physically present work is necessarily good or bad. What matters to promote job satisfaction, reduce turnover, and well-being is giving employees greater control over when and where they do their jobs, as well as providing supervisor support for them as people, not just employees. We found that most value flexible ways of working, although many remote workers report greater overload, working more intensely and for more hours. But we also find that workers value collaboration and want to be part of a group. So I think, though there'll be extremes on both ends, I think most of organizations are going to follow some hybrid future, a mix of virtual and in-person work arrangements.
One of the issues that's come up in our conversations, and I'm sure many, if not most organizations, are issues around equity. And you referred to that a little bit in your comments with the subgroup differences. And there's a lot of ways in which equity can play out. I've read things in various business journals that wonder about the impact of being in the office where you're visible and the supervisor can see you and there's the hallway conversation. And then maybe that creates some also some inequities around opportunities. On the other hand, I've read other articles saying if you're in the office and in person, you get stuck doing all the tasks that somebody needs to do, and you happen to be the convenient one who's right there that the supervisor asked you to do because somebody else is remote and they're not kind of right on the radar. So what would you suggest as organizations are wrestling through these questions of equity? What are some good ways to think about that challenge?
This is such an important point, and it's sort of an unknown yet. What I'm worried about is the unintended consequences. For instance, maybe it will be mothers of small children mostly choosing to work remotely, and how will that stratify the workforce and promote greater disparities. Some people may be having more options than others, and what does that mean? What we found in terms of the answer to your specific question is we trained supervisors to not focus on a person's presence being there, but to focus rather on the results. Are they achieving the objectives that you want in a timely manner? So right now, most of managing has been by walking around and looking at people, and are they there? Do they appear to be working? Many people told us in the organizations we've studied that when do they leave? They left work when their supervisor left. They left immediately afterwards. So they would look like good workers, that ideal worker. This is can be changed, and managers can focus on performance, not presence.
Well, thank you very much, Professor Moen. I will say I always learn a lot when I have conversations with Professor Moen, and today is no different. And your research has been helpful really in guiding a lot of our conversations in the college. I know you gave a talk to our staff, which they found very helpful, and people have been referring to your work. I do have your book right behind me here, and it's not there as a prop. It's because I actually do keep it right there on the shelf behind me so I can look things up in there occasionally. So I want to just thank you for all that you do for us, and thank you for being here tonight.
Yeah, and if I could just say, in terms of liberal arts research, I think that what we're doing in the college and across the nation is important in capturing the human meanings of hyperchange in the nature of work, that gets sometimes left behind when the focus is only on technology. We need to look at what does it mean? What are the costs and opportunities for people of different ages and life stages and from advantaged and disadvantaged locations? But thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Moen.
Thank you, Dean Coleman, and thanks to all our presenters for sharing your experiences and your research with us. We will share out all the resources mentioned tonight, as well as our faculty research video. We'll share those out in a post-event email that you'll all receive. So keep your eye on your inbox for that. And we're now going to take the last portion of our event to move into our Q&A portion of the town hall. So Dean Coleman and our presenters and also our college leaders are here and ready to answer your questions. Thank you to those who submitted questions in advance through registration. We'll go ahead and start with a couple of those, and I'm excited to see a number of questions coming through the Q&A button as well. So keep those coming, and any questions we don't get to, we will respond to in the post-event email. So we'll go ahead and get started. And we received this question from a few people here tonight. What are you anticipating enrollment numbers will be in the fall? And Nanette Hanks, I think I'll throw that one to you.
Thanks, Megan. We're looking at the numbers really carefully. And of course, it's hard at this point in the registration queue to know what the numbers will be because none of our freshmen have registered. Our enrollments have been pretty steady over the last 2 years. So for example, in 2019, we had 55,700 enrollments. In fall 20, we had 55,092. So we did lose some enrollments from 19 to 20. We expect that we're going to have just a really big class of freshmen coming in, really pushing up to 3,000. So we're looking anxiously at the enrollments, and we won't be able to know for sure until we get through that registration queue in the summer. But we expect that our enrollments to be on par with what they've been in the past couple of years. So hopefully above 55,000.
Great, thank you so much. And our next question is from Andy H. And they write, CLA, like most schools, has a goal of recruiting more diverse students. How is CLA supporting BIPOC students now? And how will you ensure CLA is a welcoming and inclusive place for BIPOC students in the future? Dr. Alex Hines, could you respond to that one for us?
Yes, thank you, Megan. In CLA undergraduate education, well, let me step back. I also manage the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. program and the President's Emerging Scholars program in the College of Liberal Arts undergraduate education. And Emily, thanks for the shout out about PES and MLK. So our students are admitted through admissions for PES, opt-in through MLK. So we serve students, BIPOC students with intersecting identities. What our goal is to provide professional development and training in collaboration with our Office of Student Experience. We've tried to reimagine our position descriptions and how our PES academic advisor works with CLA career service and internships. Our new assistant director of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. program works with OSE, Office of Student Experience, to assist with curriculum and providing trained professional development for those section and team leaders. We've also offered numerous professional development for academic advisors, staff, and student support services. So we provide that cultural and attentive, responsive advising and student support services for all our students in CLA. We continue to work with the Office of Student Experience in providing Youth Thrive events that are culturally responsive, culturally relevant. So we're supporting not just BIPOC students, but all students in CLA to engage across differences and issues around race, power, justice, and privilege. My last piece I'll add to that is that I have the privilege and honor of serving on the campus-wide Multicultural Student Success Committee. And we piloted the EverFi Diversity module, which deals with identity, race, power, and privilege. We were one of the key contributors. 92% of our students said that this should be for every student coming to campus. And this year, the project was initiated. We had close to 10,400 students, first-year students, and students currently in their sophomore, junior, and senior year that participated. We look at the pre and post test, and we see that the understanding and awareness around differences is rising through this project. So we're doing numerous things, not only in CLA, but campus-wide as well.
Great, thank you. And feel free to submit more follow-up questions in the Q&A button. We have a question here from Cheryl P. And they ask, or they say, talk more about the Community Partners program that will be housed in Pillsbury. How will partners be recruited and identified? What is CLA looking for in these partners? Dean Coleman, would you be able to take that question? And we can certainly send out additional resources and information afterwards as well.
Yes, I'd be happy to. So the identification of the partners, it really is an open application and proposal process. So we put out a call. We try to spread that word widely, but we're always open for more ideas about how do we get the word out even more. Certainly we do it through social media and sending out to organizations who we think can then share it with others as well. And community partners would submit proposals. We have an advisory board that consists of faculty, staff, and some representatives from community groups. And they essentially sift through and evaluate these proposals and come up with a set of them. Our first year, when we did a pilot of all of this in a different building, not in the home for this, we had 5 different residencies. And so at least as we start, that'll be about the number that we're typically looking at. And they were looking at things like the reach of the of the program, an assessment of what the expected benefits of being on campus are, and what is the proximity to our students and our faculty and our staff. What is the benefit from that? Involvement of students, if possible, is always an additional attraction beyond the involvement with faculty and staff. We look for, I would say, organizations that are looking at, in addition to new questions, could also be looking at fairly enduring questions around social, economic, and community issues, but maybe looking at them in quite a different way, where the access to researchers on campus or to creative artists would be particularly valuable. So there's a number of factors that come into play. We do have, as Megan Mel mentioned, we have a website. We'll send you the link to that where you can get a sense of who's been selected for this in the pilot year that we did it, what kind of work they were doing, and that'll give you a further sense of what we're looking for and what the proposal process is like. But we very much want to spread the word about this. We were really gratified with the number of proposals we received in the first year that we did this, and hope that that'll grow. And hopefully over time we'll figure out ways to do, I guess, shorter term residencies would be one way to think about it. They don't all have to be for a semester or for a whole academic year. You can have a residency for a month or 6 weeks or something like that. So sort of in that spirit of being more flexible and nimble, we'll be doing that with the Engagement Hub as well.
Great, thank you. And we are switching gears a little bit, and I'm going to put this next question to Annika Karlstead. Megan W. asks, with the return to campus in the fall, does CLA have enough space to allow for social distancing in classrooms if that's still required?
Thanks, Megan. Yeah, that is one of the questions. We have been paying attention to guidelines from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, Minnesota Department of Health, and obviously there's a number of changes that occurred just last week. So we are hopeful that we'll have more flexibility than we did this last academic year. But for many of our departments, particularly in the arts and social sciences, who already had a need during the pandemic to hold some on-campus in-person classes, they already found really creative ways to do that within their existing facilities. So should that need continue, they've got some really creative solutions to do that. The university as a whole, because CLA, we certainly rely on kind of the greater kind of resource of classrooms across campus, that they're prepared to assign classrooms, whether we need to maintain 6 feet of physical distancing, 4 feet, or even 3 feet. They've modeled all those scenarios and are waiting to assign classrooms as soon as we know more. And we're hoping later this month, and so our students can know what to expect in the fall.
Great, we will keep an eye on that, wait to hear more. Our next question is from Rebecca K, and they ask, with the increase in vaccinations and loosening of COVID restrictions, do you anticipate being able to reverse the decision to not accept new students into PhD programs in the fall? Also, how are you helping your new PhD graduates find jobs in this current market? Dean Coleman, I'll start with you, and if anyone else wants to jump in, please do.
Sure, thank you. So we did have a pause on graduate admissions in many of our programs this fall. It was about half of them, and the other half, I would say nearly all, had a reduced number of graduate students who they admitted for this year, who will be arriving in September of 2021. And that was driven by a number of things, in part because the job market was going to be rather grim for graduate students who would be heading out into the job market. And we realized that, we could help some of them by giving them opportunities to be teaching assistants and so on. But if we brought in a whole large new group of students, that might be more difficult to do. We also just are aware that in some disciplines, the job markets are getting a little more difficult. So we wanted to be sensitive to that reality as well. And part of it, frankly, was the university's financial challenges and the colleges that were induced by the COVID pandemic. So the way that I think about it and the way that I've been talking about this is that what I'm really optimistic about and what I am so looking forward to in the 21-22 academic year is that we get to become more fully ourselves again. Some of the things that we had to put on hold, some of the graduate admissions, for example, that will start back up in this coming year. And we'll be having people doing research in person. We'll be having events in person. We'll be having more classes, certainly far more classes in person. And so more of the normal life, I guess I would say, of the college will be returning. And that very much includes ramping back up on our graduate admission. So you definitely will see that occurring this year. We did say that it was a 1-year pause, and that indeed is what it is. So we will be starting that back up. Now, if a department came to us and said, we want to pause again for whatever reason, obviously we would honor that. And in many cases, this conversation started because we did have departments coming to us saying that they were thinking they wanted to pause their admissions. And then we had a broader conversation in the college. So Emily, I guess I'll kick it over to you if there's anything you want to say. Emily's office is more on the undergraduate side, but I know that they have conversations with career services on the graduate side as well. So I don't know if there's anything that you want to add in terms of the preparation for graduate students going out on the job market.
Yeah, I'm not sure that there's too much I can add. Our office serves undergraduate students primarily, but there is, we do have a director of graduate career services, and that person is situated outside of our office. And so we collaborate with her in terms of, different initiatives. We had some collaboration related to the internship challenge, so helping elevate some internship opportunities that would be at the graduate level. And a lot of cross-sharing of resources happens, but not too much. I'm not too much in her world to be able to share specifically.
Yeah, and I can add a little bit there. We do have, she meets with individual students, she meets with departments to help them think through strategies for their graduate students to be prepared for the various careers. And one of the primary things that her office is responsible for is really thinking about broadening the career paths that graduate students might consider. So thinking well beyond the academic world, certainly into many other lines of work. And so I think we've been making strong strides there, and we'll continue to work on that in the years to come. And frankly, that's been particularly important this last year.
Great, thank you, everyone. And it is we're approaching the end of our hour. So unfortunately, we're going to have to wrap up our Q&A and our conversation. But thank you to our alumni and friends for your excellent questions. And we did have a few questions we weren't able to answer, we didn't get to this evening. So we will certainly do our best to share some of those answers again in that post-event email. Just wait for it. It's going to be full of all sorts of things. So we just keep adding more. So stay tuned for that. But Dean Coleman, do you have any closing thoughts you'd like to share before we end tonight?
Yeah, thank you, Megan. I do want to thank everybody for being with us tonight. Thank all of the panelists for your excellent comments. And I just want to thank you. I want to thank all of you who are watching this on behalf of the faculty and staff and students in CLA. Your support and friendship for the college means a lot. We are committed to maintaining and always increasing the level of excellence in the college and making this a place that you are proud of and that has a prestige that you are proud of as well. And what we accomplish depends a lot on you and your investment in the college, whether that's financial, time, energy, just supporting us in spirit, however it might be. All of it matters, and we are deeply grateful. So thank you very much.